It may be a bumpy road ahead in the travel industry. Coming up on the Travel Insights podcast, we are going to cover a recent article that came out in the AP News covering the consumer confidence scores in the US. They have reached a 12-year low, specifically in the categories of the job market, income, and business. This could have a ripple effect on the travel industry, and we're going to talk about it and come up with some recommendations on how travel businesses can prepare for the fluctuations in demand that might be in front of us. Coming up in our next episode of the Travel Insights podcast, powered by Battleface. Welcome, fellow travelers, to episode 6 of the second season of the Travel Insights podcast. I am your host and head of marketing at Battleface, Coomer. Glad to have you with us today. The news has been pretty wild lately, and it's been hard to keep up with the changes. And unless you live under a rock, you've heard something about tariffs and the stock market. Now, as a likely result of some of these changes, consumer confidence scores are on the decline. And I'm struggling to come up with one singular word to describe the current state of the US and broader macroeconomies. But the first thought that came to my mind was the word unprecedented, which to a certain extent is accurate because there is, in fact, a lot of unknowns about what is ahead of us. But the reality is that this is not post 9/11. This is not post 2008 housing crisis, and this isn't COVID-19. And the other reality is the caution flags are out, and various economic indicators and consumer sentiment reports suggest a bumpy road ahead, and one we should be preparing for now. So, how can travel businesses prepare for the uncertainty of what lies ahead? All of that's coming up next. We'll dive into 4 key takeaways from a recent AP News article and some tactics for you to consider. So, stick with us. The Travel Insights podcast is powered by Battleface. Battleface has cracked the partnership code by offering one-of-a-kind products uniquely designed for how partners travelers see the world, all backed by 24/7, 365 global assistance services. It's the perfect combination of winning an attachment and enhancing lifetime value. Battleface, built for today's travelers and building for tomorrow's. Welcome back. Now, let's get into some travel-specific insights relative to the recent news of declining consumer confidence scores. So there's a recent AP News article that I read through that covered this topic around consumer sentiment. And here are some takeaways that I think would be relevant for the travel industry. So first is a caution on consumer spending. So with lower consumer confidence, travelers may become more cautious in their discretionary spending decisions. So potentially fewer spontaneous bookings or reduced spending per trip, and preference towards more budget-friendly travel alternatives, which, as we saw in last week's podcast episode, we are seeing reduced spending per trip, particularly for upcoming summer travel. Number 2 is sensitivity to price and promotions. So I would expect travelers to become highly sensitive to price promotions and deals and other discounting-based offers, and companies may also find success by adjusting pricing strategies and creating compelling and value-driven packages to incentivize these bookings for trips. There could be shifts in travel preferences. At number 3, we have shifts in travel preferences, something we also noted in our recent episode on the Insights podcast. Budget and value-based segments, so for example, economy hotels, budget airlines, and all-inclusive resorts may benefit, while premium or luxury segments may face some headwinds unless offering substantial value adds. Short-haul trips and domestic tourism will likely see increased interest as travelers seek more affordable and manageable travel options. Again, a trend that we're currently seeing for summer travel trips coming up here in 2025. Number 4, the importance of flexible booking policies. So travelers cautious about their economic outlook will prioritize flexibility in booking, particularly in the terms and refund and cancellation policies. And brands that provide customer friendly booking policies and clearly communicated guarantees may be better positioned to retain consumer trust. It's also important to remember this key stat. So this is according to 2024 Pew Research, and in their reports, over half of Americans are defined as middle class. So that means that they have an average annual household income that ranges from 52,000 up to 100,000 per year. So half of America, right? And it stands to reason and common sense probability that these households will feel the impacts of projected heightened cost of goods and have a less likelihood of using disposable income on travel. Or, as reported in the previous summer travel trends podcast episode, they will elect to take those less expensive trips that are closer to home. So, after a quick break, we're going to stay in the travel industry and uncover a data point or a couple of data points that might signal the slowdown has already begun. Stick with us. Travel Insights podcast is powered by Battleface. While there might be uncertainty around consumers' confidence, the one thing they can be confident in is your ability to provide affordable and customized options for travel protection. Partnering with Battleface enables you to decide what is best for your travelers, all backed by 24/7, 365 global travel assistance services. Battleface, built for today's travelers and building for tomorrow's. Welcome back. Clay Coomer here, host of the Travel Insights podcast. 2025 was off to a strong start with 1.7 million more travelers going through TSA in the US in January and February compared to 2024. It has since slowed down in March and in the first week of April, as 542,000 less travelers have passed through TSA compared to last year. This could be an early sign of Americans withholding money spent on travel, given the fact that this time of year in March and April is a peak travel season when families and with children specifically would be taking spring break trips. Possible that they might have been taking road trips instead, but nonetheless, there were over 500,000 less travelers that went through TSA in March and in that first week of April. And according to the International Trade Administration I-92 data, which tracks international travelers, so non-US citizens, arrivals and departures to and from the US is also starting to see fewer international travelers. February and March combined had over 695,000 less international travelers arriving to the US compared to 2024. Now, the peak travel months for non-US citizens traveling to the US is July and August. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out in the months to come. I think it's also important to note here travel and tourism's GDP contribution in the US is nothing to balk at over 2.3 trillion in economic impact in 2023. It represents approximately 10% of the US economy. So let's all hope the slowdown in TSA throughput and international arrivals over the last 2 months are not signs to come for continued decline, but we must be prepared if it becomes a trend. So, coming up in our last segment, we'll cover the implications of US consumer confidence at the global and macroeconomic level and a few recommendations for actions travel businesses can take if things persist as we continue into 2025. Stick with us. The US has one of the largest consumer driven economies, so the current state of consumer confidence could have a ripple effect across global markets, thus influencing international consumer confidence and spending patterns. Travel, tourism, and hospitality operators that are especially reliant on international visitors or US outbound tourism should prepare contingency plans for potential demand fluctuations. So, here are a few recommendations for travel businesses that categorically fall within tourism, hospitality, etc. Here are a few things to consider. First is adjust your marketing messaging. So, as a marketer, it's something that I particularly take seriously with messaging concepts. So, one thing that should be emphasized is affordability, value, and transparency. The second thing that I would also recommend is enhancing customer loyalty and engagement type initiatives to retain existing customers who might otherwise delay or cancel travel plans. Next, I would also monitor your booking patterns very closely. So, this is something that I tend to do on a very frequent basis as a part of my daily work, but also for the Insights podcast. But being able to monitor booking patterns closely will allow you to quickly adapt strategies to shifting consumer preferences and sentiment. Lastly, I would recommend focusing in and strengthening operational efficiencies, specifically with cost management, to help navigate periods of reduced consumer demand effectively. And the reality is that the resiliency of the travel industry since 2021 has been incredibly strong, right? And while it's possible things may slow down a bit in 2025, the reality is most people, myself included, love to travel and experience the world. So long as the spirit of travel remains high, I'm personally hopeful that things will in fact stabilize. And that concludes this episode of the Travel Insights podcast. I am your host, Clay Coomer, the head of marketing at Battleface. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Travel Insights podcast, available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time. And until then, safe travels.